From my opinion, Aikido is what makes it unique is that it is a 100% life-affirming martial art. In fact, I would say it is the only, by design, the only 100% life-affirming martial art. That means that by design, by principle, philosophy, and technical design, the whole art is generative. That we enter into conflict, we face conflict like a true warrior, but we do it for a higher purpose, for the resolution, the conflict resolution, which is the healing of that conflict. And in that sense, Aikido is generative, it is life-affirming, and it is 100% positive sum. Great. Welcome everybody to this Integral Dojo community call on Aikido, martial art, our spiritual path. Oh my gosh, what a question. It seems to be so polarized these days of what it is. And let me just start off the bat by saying everybody is right. They're just not completely right. And that includes me. I'm not totally right. So I think these arguments, they are not the arguments, but the debates or whatever, the big question whether Aikido is a martial art or a spiritual path, it does kind of miss the point. But what's very important about this question is the fact that the nature of this question is that it polarizes. Yeah, it polarizes us, usually into one or another camp, or we try to somehow have both feet in each perspectives, but we're always going to be challenged by that polarization, and that is a good thing for anybody walking a higher path of practice. So we're going to get into all these details, but before we do, this is going to be like a one-off thing, and I think that we'll have a good time of practice together, especially in these days where we are not meeting so regularly. I was just talking the other day to Ulrika. She's a friend of mine she lives in Munich. How much we miss the seminars. I would see Ulrika like every couple of months, in person physically, and we get to train, but we haven't done that for 10 months now, something like that. So it's quite some time since we've been able to train together, but thank God for technology and Zoom that we can get together, and there's a lot of these types of gatherings. And today we're going to do, like I said, it's not just a way to get together, but it's also going to be a practice. Community calls are really, for me just to kind of say a few things, but then to get the community together to share and connect and even practice, which is what we're going to do today. And I think I want to start this session off with a poll. I have set up a poll. The question is very simple. It's the title of this community call. Is Aikido a martial art or a spiritual path? And you can answer as many of these as you want, or as few of these as you want, or zero if you want. The question is very simple. Is Aikido first question, is a martial art? Second question, a spiritual path? Third question, both? Fourth question, neither. I suspect that if you showed up to this call, you're probably going to be leaning a little bit more towards one or the other. Well, I would say the other, but I'll let the questions come in. Okay, so 90% of our participants have said it's both. 10% said it's a spiritual path, and 0% said it's a martial art. Now, my feeling in the Aikido world is that if this was an open question to everybody who's doing Aikido, my guess, this is really just on intuition, but my guess would be in the world, martial art would probably be top, and then both would be second. That's my guess, but I could be wrong. But that's good to know kind of the group of people that we're with. We are among Sangha people here, because it's actually, where most of the people did say that it's both, and we're going to explore exactly how it's both. First, I want to just start off with a couple of things, and then I'm going to let you go into I'm going to let you go into breakout groups, explaining exactly how it's both. I'm going to pin my video, so just give me or spotlight my video. There we go. Okay, so let me just kind of start off the bat by saying that Aikido, what makes, this is my opinion, obviously. For those of you who don't know me, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about myself, but I've been doing Aikido 35 years now. Like Kayla's probably getting close, over 40 years, I guess, Kayla. Yeah, so I'm up there, but there's people that have been doing Aikido a lot longer with me and exploring these questions for sure. But I have some background. I studied in Japan with Saito Sensei. I also studied with my first teacher, Bill Sosa Sensei, in Dallas, Texas. And and I guess I've been teaching for about 25 years now, if not even a little bit. Yeah, about 25 years now. And this is a question that has come up for me quite a bit. So I've been exploring this question for quite some time. And what is very clear for me, and it always has been clear, is that Aikido is a unique martial art in the martial arts world. And what makes it unique is that it's a 100%, again, this is my opinion here. Feel free to disagree. From my opinion, Aikido what makes it unique is that it is a 100% life-affirming martial art. In fact, I would say it is the only, by design, the only 100% life-affirming martial art. That means that by design, by principle, philosophy, and technical design, the whole art is generative. That we enter into conflict, we face conflict like a true warrior, but we do it for a higher purpose, for the resolution, the conflict resolution, which is the healing of that conflict. And in that sense, Aikido is generative, it is life-affirming, and it is 100% positive sum. All other martial arts are, and I could be wrong here, but from what I've seen out there, all other martial arts, when push comes to shove, they're zero sum, or maybe from the beginning they're zero sum. So what is positive sum? What is zero sum? Zero sum means that there's only enough for one person to win and the other person loses, or one group to win and the other groups to lose, or one country to win and the other countries to lose. That there's only one winner and then there's one loser. And any conflict, that's the formula. If a conflict equals one, if there's 100% that breaks into two and has a conflict, the best it could be, if it's balanced, it's 50% here and 50% here. And the winner is going to take all the 100% and the loser gets zero. That's why it's zero sum. And in a zero sum situation, victory always comes at the cost, or satisfaction, let's say, satisfaction. Hey, I won, I'm satisfied. It's nice to win. I think we could all agree with that. I'm satisfied, but it comes at the cost of somebody else's dissatisfaction. And that's zero sum. Now there's sports and there's competition, and we all love winning and we all love playing, and even losing is cool as long as you play the game wonderfully. And I have a 7-year-old daughter now, and she's starting to learn that. She used to hate to lose and start crying, but now she's starting to get, no, okay, losing is also okay. We're having fun. It's the whole game. She's growing into that understanding, but there's still one loser and one winner. That's the zero sum. Even if you agree to disagree in a conflict. That's kind of the best we can do in zero sum. You take 50% over to your corner. I take 50% over to my corner. We don't bother each other anymore, but I'm not fully satisfied because we're separate. We haven't merged together. And that's what Aikido does. Now, you might argue that Tai Chi would do something like that. But even if you look at some of the moves in Tai Chi, like they're breaking an arm and breaking the chin and the nose and all these things, and even though they're not actually doing that, the design is from there. And that's what's amazing about what O-sensei discovered through his spiritual awakening. Again, my opinion, that the nature of the universe is positive sum, and Aikido kind of came out that way. So first and foremost, I want to start off with that what makes Aikido both martial and spiritual is that it's positive sum. Now, the other thing I want to say about that, and this is probably why Aikido is a positive sum art, that I believe, again, this is my belief, that Aikido is it's resting on a spiritual core. And what does it mean that it's resting on a spiritual core? It basically means that at the core of the art is an absolute perspective. Now, maybe if we take this out of martial arts for a moment and talk about let's say, spiritual traditions, or I don't want to say religion so much, because religion has dogma and institutions. So let's take that away. The spiritual traditions, whether it's Christian spirituality or Buddhist spirituality or Hindu spirituality or Sufi spirituality, or take your pick, indigenous spirituality. At the core, let's take Buddhism as an example. It's not exclusive to Buddhism, but that's my background. So what the Buddha discovered 2,500 years ago was an absolute perspective. And that absolute perspective in that tradition is called non-self. A little bit later, it was also upgraded in a way to non-dual. But whether we're talking about non-self or non-dual, these are both absolute perspectives. And non-self, a formula of non-self is that it equals zero, that it's empty, that there's nothing there. Everything is empty. It's all insubstantial. Absolutely. That means there's nothing outside of that principle. No, non-dual means that everything is one. So non-self is zero, non-dual is one. Like in the Hebrew, Judeo-Christian traditions, echad, there is one God, is basically a declaration of the non-dual truth of reality, that it's all one, that it is all one. And that would be, in a way, two sides of the same spiritual coin, one side being emptiness, one side being fullness, but they're both paradoxically absolute. And now the reason that something like Buddhism has lasted in an unbroken chain of lineage for 2,500 years is because it's resting on the core of absolute. It's resting on absolute truth. And that absolute truth has been transmitted from student to student to student to student to student, teacher, student, to all the way through. Men and women have been transmitting that along in an unbroken chain for 2,500 years because it's resting on an absolute core. If it was a relative core, like I'm from Dallas, Texas originally, and I grew up a Cowboy fan, and I absolutely love the Cowboys. It's nostalgic. I still love the Cowboys. I don't even know. I haven't watched football for probably 20 years or something like that, so I don't know how they are these days, but I guess they're not champions anymore. But they were winning a lot back then. But I'm still a fan, but that's a relative truth. It's relative to the 70s and 80s, back when I was living there. And it's relative to however many other 18, 24 more football teams there are. It's relative. Aikido is, in the world of martial arts, it's also relative. There's Aikido, karate, etc. But from my opinion, what O-Sensei discovered was an absolute core. That's what birthed out Aikido. And that's why we need to understand that what does it mean for it to be a martial art that is fully martial, because we all said both here. I agree with you, by the way, that it's both. That it's fully martial, but at the same time, it's a spiritual path that is fully spiritual. And this brings us really to the crux of this almost unresolvable question. Is it a martial art or is it a spiritual path? Because if we say it's a martial art completely, if we say it's a martial art and we take that all the way, that means that when you get into conflict or if you get into a fight, and by the way, let me put this in a little bit of a context. Budo, martial way, the martial in Budo, the kanji, the Japanese character, is made up of a few different elements of Chinese characters, and what it means, according to its etymology, is that it's stopping a spear. Bu literally means stopping a spear, so it means it's stopping violence. So Bu is always meaning a morally virtuous fight. Yeah, so Budo, it's in a way it's elevated to just fighting, survival. I'm going to kill you so I don't die. That's like whatever. If you have to survive, you have to survive. Okay, but Budo, Bu is actually elevated to a morally virtuous fighting. So it's fighting the good fight, fighting for a higher purpose. Now that purpose could be your clan. Like in Japan and during the warring days, there were all these different clans. I sacrifice my life for my daimyo, for my clan, and I fight that clan over there. Now, my clan could be right or wrong. We could be the aggressors or whatever. It doesn't matter, but I'm sacrificing myself for something greater. So that's what budo means. It's this greater thing. Now, if we take budo, if we take martial arts all the way in a fighting context, that means that you will be willing in a fight, if push comes to shove, and if you are truly, truly, truly a man or a woman of martial way, of budo, you will kill for something that's greater than you. And you know, in Aikido, whatever, we live in the West, and it's, you know, what kind of conflicts? We have conflicts here and there, but no real. Most of us have probably never been to war or had fights for that matter. But if we're going to walk a martial path, that's really what it means, that you have to be willing. Now, I'm a parent with 2 small children, and I can tell you I wouldn't hesitate. If it was their life, if I was protecting them, there's no question for me. I've never had to face that. Who knows how I would act in that moment? But if I put myself kind of in that mind experiment, yeah, sure, I can understand it. I really can't imagine. I've never killed somebody, and I would hate to be in that position. But there are 1 or 2 situations in my life, I think, that I wouldn't even think twice. It would, if I had to, I would. It would be no question. Now, whether I would freeze or get afraid, who knows? I've never been tested there, but that's where I take this question. If I look at this question with martial art, you take it all the way. You must be willing to take life for a greater good, not for your own ego. You know, not like Darth Vader. Did you guys hear that the actor of Darth Vader died today? I forget his name, but not the voice. It was James Earl Jones's voice, but the actual actor passed away today. So, you know, homage to the great Darth Vader, at least the actor. But the character of Darth Vader was evil in the sense that he used his powers over other people for his own benefit. He killed other people for his own benefit. So that's not really budo. That's kind of a really low level, just using your power. And you could say abuse of power. But budo means that you would actually, if push come to shove, you would kill for greater good. A spiritual path, on the other hand, and this is where things get really tricky. A spiritual, if you take it all the way, which is you're surrendering yourself, you're dropping into emptiness. There's no self, non-self, or you're embracing non-duality. You're recognizing your divinity, the divinity in yourself and in others. You're embracing love and compassion and care. If you take that all the way, not only would you not kill, take another person's life. Oh my God, it's the biggest transgression in the universe to take a life of another human being. Not only would you not do that, but you would sacrifice your own life for the purpose of another, for the purpose of spirit. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Let me just unpin my video for a second. So let me just see a raise of hands. Does that make sense of what I'm saying? That and again, you can disagree with me later. Yeah, we're going to open up the mics and stuff. But a budo path means that you're if push came to shove for greater good, you would kill. Heaven forbid, but no question. A spiritual path means if push comes to shove, you'll sacrifice your life for a greater good. Now, how can those 2 things come together in the same place at the same time? If it's not making you mad, I don't mean angry, I mean like crazy, then you're not holding them together. For me, Aikido is a deeply profound koan. How can we hold these 2 things together? How can we be fully martial and fully spiritual at the same time? And when we have debates or arguments or discussions, I think it's quite good to have these debates and arguments and discussions about, is it martial or is it spiritual? But if it's serving zero sum, then we have to question the way we're approaching it. If it's really looking at these 2 opposites that cannot occupy the same place at the same time, like these 2 polarities, I will kill when push comes to shove, heaven forbid, but I guess I would. Or I will give my life if push comes to shove, heaven forbid, but I guess I would. These are two opposites. How can they occupy the same place at the same time? And as you start to do that, it's going to create a tension. It's going to create a conflict. It's going to create an internal conflict. Wow, how wonderful that we're doing Aikido, because we are men and women of the spiritual path, a martial spiritual path, and we are here to face and confront conflict. Oh my God. Let's see how we're doing on time. You know what I want to do? So I've kind of loaded the question here. I'm going to let you go into breakout groups and just tell me, how is this sitting for you? You know, what do you think about this question right now? Mark and Kayla, could you stay here, Kayla? You guys stay here with me and everybody else. I'm opening up the breakout rooms. So we're going to stay here in the main room, and we're going to have this same discussion.
Cool.
So maybe let's go in simple logical order. Kayla, how are you doing? It's so good to see you.
Simple logical.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
So yeah, what's coming up for you now?
Oh, such a beautiful. I love the last thing you said. We are in. This is such a complex question because we are in this place where, can we really ask ourselves this question honestly? If I had to kill, would I? And having a child makes this question so much easier to answer.
That's the easiest to answer in a way, huh?
If my son's life were at risk, I would absolutely, there would be no doubt in my mind.
No hesitation even.
No hesitation. And as you said, who knows what would happen? I mean, fear could take over. I might freeze because I've never been in that situation. But on the other side, as a spiritual seeker, would I be able to let go of ego enough to stand aside and to protect? Would I be able to protect by not killing if I were truly tested? Does that make sense?
It makes totally sense. I'm glad you said that from an egoic perspective. The big question, because that's it. Yeah, our sense of self, and I don't mean ego, but in a bad way. I mean just the sense of self. That we have a kind of a tendency to defend that. Would I be able to surrender that? That's always the big question.
Yeah. I mean, I could say so much more, but I want to let the others of you.
Well, Mark, you want to chime in?
Sure. Am I sympologically next? Great word, Shelly. So I actually put a little note to the everyone in the chat, and I don't know if you saw it, but essentially what I would say is that I agree with this in principle, absolutely, and I think we all aspire to be able to maintain that level of selflessness. I think it's kind of hard to do even in the face of my cat yowling all night, much less in the face of somebody attacking my family, much less someone attacking, how do I put this? My Chuck Hawk Sensei, my teacher, he tells a story about years ago. Incidentally, Kayla, I'm sorry, we've never met or trained together, but I look forward to doing that sometime. You come with nothing but accolades. Anyway, so Chuck tells a story about when he was working in a mental health situation, and one of the guys on the floor just kind of went wacko. And Chuck had to sort of kind of tackle him or whatever. And they got into a scuffle because none of the other guys were there to come help. So it was him one-on-one for a little while. And he said he ended up with the guy, Chuck had his hands on the guy's throat. And there he was choking him. And the guys had to pull him off. And he said he realized in that moment, he shared with us, he says, if anybody here, like in our class, thinks that you're not capable of killing and that you wouldn't, you don't understand. It's very much there. So my question is, it's hard enough to not have a kind of like wanting to win or wanting to whatever come up in the course of an Aikido class where no one's being attacked. If someone actually came at me, I would love to think, okay, I'm gonna remember, but that's high hopes. I've been attacked once in the last 5 years. And in fact, I did not get into a fight when I could have. But I also really wasn't feeling really threatened. I kind of knew that, he seemed sort of bumbling and he was bigger than me, but I wasn't really afraid. But if I was really afraid, I guess the last thing I'll say is fear is very motivating. And I think it wouldn't take much for the fear to push me past my spiritual goals.
But then you're talking a little bit about, delusion and our instincts, etc.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But this is meant to be a thought experiment. So we take two absolutes in our mind abstractly, but we know what they're two, and we try to. And what would you do if you had those two things? And that's why it's a koan. We make it simple. We simplify it to make it incredibly, incredibly difficult. Because any answer that's this way or that way is a polarization.
I only said what I said to make a differentiation between the willingness to kill for a higher good, or what we consider to be a higher good, which my children, I guess, would be if I had children, or even someone else's children. I think I would kill for someone else's children too. And the slippery slope that could lead me to think I'm acting for a higher cause, but really it's just my ego wanting to, I think in the moment that can be very hard to be really truthful to.
There's no question about it. I think for all of us that's included. But if we keep it as a thought experiment, and we
so clarify the nugget of the koan here, because I think I might have missed it.
Okay. What does it mean?
As simple as possible. How hard can it be?
What does it mean to be willing to kill for higher good, and at the same time to be willing to sacrifice yourself for higher good?
Okay, got it.
What does that mean? Which is like there is the paradox of that. You think about it. We're going to go to Carl.
Yeah.
Give Carl a shot. From Humboldt County, soaking up some sun.
Tanning. Lucky Carl.
Hello.
Hey, Carl.
I see Aikido as a spiritual path that is grounded in martial art. The martial art part keeps the spiritual path from being too wishy-washy, too much of a fairy tale, a spiritual bypass.
Mm-hmm.
And I would
but you can say the opposite too, Carl.
Yes. But I tend to. It's my nature. It's my nature to put the spiritual path as the greater of equals, if you want to call it that.
I agree with you. It's mine too. I happen to agree with that. I didn't always agree with that, by the way.
And when you ask your question, your koan, would you die or kill for the greater good? Depends on what the greater good is. And as far as I can tell, being just a peasant in the world of manifestation, it's to be recreated over and over again, improving ourselves. So, given that's my chunk of the greater good, the situation may call for dying or it may call for killing. And hopefully it has a middle way. But if it comes to that extreme, I will make that decision then.
And then Kayla, go ahead.
It seems that there's also a question that comes up: your greater good, the greater good, right? And that can be subjective. And
I think it has to be subjective for the koan.
Yeah.
Was there anything else, Kayla, that you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, and my mind's churning. Go ahead, Mark. I'll add to it.
So here's my answer to your question. It's a question, actually, that I'm answering with a question, but I heard a recording of Adyashanti once, and he was in the process of calling everybody back after his talk to say, okay, let's do a little sit now. And he sat back and watched as everybody sort of straightened up, and they were sitting in their chairs and they got their, all their stuff together, because now we're going to sit. And he says to them, what right this minute is keeping you from waking up? You don't have to get up and sit. It's like the question of what's there in front of you. What's the impediment to just being awake right now? That's the question. And whatever the answer is for you, that's what this is. That's my answer to your question, Miles. It's not an answer to the koan, but it's the question. The answer to that question would be the same answer as the answer to that koan.
It's the question to the koan.
Yeah, a question of a question of a koan.
I didn't come here to have my questions answered. I came here to have my answers questioned.
That's right. That's right.
And with that, let's open up the mics. Would somebody like to share what kind of came up we'll do maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people what came up for you in your group when you explored this this question / koan, this issue. And Daniel Palacios, please open your mic.
Hi. Well, yeah, since nobody else was raising their hand, it was interesting in my group with Renata and Bob Pierce, because I think the 3 of us are actually conflict averse people. So we all agreed that if it was a life and death situation, yeah, we would all probably take a life if it came to that, or at least we would know the outcome, but it'd probably be sort of a fight for survival type thing. But, to what extent is that really truly because we're martial artists as opposed to we're human beings, and maybe that's part of human nature. Right. Survival instinct is built in. So, we all felt that as part of our spiritual aspect, we felt that why we train Aikido is to prepare ourselves to deal with conflict situations in a better way. That, is the sword that gives life versus the sword that takes life. I think those were some of the elements that we discussed.
That's great, Daniel. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I just see David is writing that Reginald Reed had his hand open or his hand raised. Reginald, if you can open up your mic, please, and then we'll bring you in. I don't see you on the screen, actually. Your mic's open. Reginald, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, how's it going?
Well, my feeling
where are you calling from today? Where are you calling from today?
Well, currently I'm in Helena, Montana.
Okay, great.
I've been, I came up here for Thanksgiving with relatives from Thermopolis, Wyoming.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so what did you
practice with Vince Salvatore Sensei is my.
You're a Vince's student. Give Vince my regards.
Few of your comments.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Now I recognize you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Get the one hand, the one-handed guy. Anyway,
sure, of course.
Yeah. So my feeling was, it depends. Was my answer, and it's to me we've been practicing a lot of the physical aspects of it. And the reason I wanted to come in here was to get more of the spiritual side of it. But in my opinion, you learn Aikido and you learn how to try to neutralize your opponent without hurting them, right? And you go as far as you can. If they keep coming at you, it reaches a point where, if you feel like your life is threatened or your family's threatened at that point, then you probably have to do something drastic. But
see, that's the point I'm taking. That's the point that I'm asking, and that's the point that I think we need to go. Because you said it depends. David Warden also wrote it depends. I mean, it truly does depend on whatever kind of artificial scenario that we create. But let's say that it goes beyond that to the point where you have to choose. Well, I'm saying I would choose to kill. In the end, right? The final, unless it. But one of our members brought up the fact of one of her relatives was going into the military, and he wants to be peaceful, but he's either gonna have to kill somebody or defend himself, right? And so. You kind of get presented with a dichotomy right there. What does that person do? They're not going to stand up there and let themselves get shot. Well, exactly. And if you're in the military, it's your duty. It is your duty to kill. So you're in a way there's a heavier obligation. But let me just come back to you for a second. You said you would kill. Now, okay, cool. So let's create a scenario here for you, Reggie. Aikido, the survival of Aikido as a martial art, let's say it's a gift to humanity, was dependent on you. That if you didn't pull it off, it was going to disappear forever. I'm just trying to put some whatever, as much weight on it as possible. And if you got into a fight, and of course you'd try to neutralize, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But if it came down to it and you had to kill, and then that means that Aikido falls flat because, okay, Aikido is not what it promised to be. You throw it away, or you sacrifice yourself and preserve Aikido. Maybe that's really a false dichotomy again, but
for God and country, maybe, all the old movies.
Well, and my point is, please don't misunderstand me. My point is not to get an answer, because like you said, it's a dichotomy. Yes. And whatever answer we give polarizes, and it makes it one and not the other. And the whole point that I introduced is that we're putting them here as both. What does it mean when they're both? Let's see. Let me just go back to one thing here. So look, again, I'm not poo-pooing anything. I'm not putting down martial arts, because in martial arts, even so-called zero-sum martial arts, competition is good. I actually love competition. I grew a lot through competition. I thought it can go too far, and it can be brutal, and it can be destroying for other people. That's not what I'm talking about. I know that I excelled through competition. I was on teams that excelled, and there was something really wonderful. It shaped my body, it shaped my mind, it developed my character, good old wholesome competition, team sports and stuff like that. And spiritual practice as well shapes the mind and the body. I guess it depends on what you're doing. And it certainly develops character and ethical standards. Yeah, spirituality and martial arts have a moral standard that you can take on if you don't have one already. But the thing about martial arts, like one of the things, about spirituality, some of the tenets of spirituality, and it doesn't matter which tradition you're in, is that it's never the other person's fault. What did Jesus say? Forgiveness, love your neighbor. Forgiveness, you forgive them. Yeah, you offer the other cheek, right? All that good stuff. It's the same thing in Buddhism and Sufism. It's never the other person's fault. You must always strive to see the divinity in others. And certainly in conflict, that's not something that we're always doing. There's forgiveness, the teachings of forgiveness and love, and so on and so on and so on in a spiritual path. And Aikido has those things in a way embedded inside them. Yeah, Mark says I should do a quick poll. We'll have to do hands, because the questions you have to set up before. But Mark is suggesting that I do a quick poll to see, what's your question here? If they're willing to kill if they feel it necessary. All right. So we'll do this by raising hands. How many people here, if push came to shove and you had to do it, heaven forbid. But there's a community call. There's nothing's happening here. If it came down to it, would you kill for a greater good? Let's see a raise of hands. No, electronically, please. So if you can figure that out, go to the bottom. I think if you hit the participants, there'll be a window that opens up on the side, and then you'll see where you can raise your hand there. And be honest. And there's no wrong answer here. Yeah, if you're saying, if push came to shove and you'd be pacifist, total respect. Yeah, Gandhi. Well, what's not to respect about that? Come on. So it looks like there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14. So about 2/3 said yes, and 1/3 said no. Next question. How many people would be willing to sacrifice their life for the greater good if push came to shove? It's weird. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, about 2/3 said yes, and about 1/3 said no. Very, very interesting. Let's see where we at. What I want to do is I want to introduce a practice that is very helpful to work with this question. Now, the question is like Reggie was saying, it's a dichotomy. It's a duality, and it's a question that comes from a dualistic mind, which most of us are probably there all the time or most of the time or whatever. And that's just the way that we see the world. It's either one or it's the other. You can't have it both ways. That's how it is. But spiritual traditions are really meant to kind of bring us into these koan situations. And a koan is a question that cannot be answered logically with the rational mind, with linear thought. These questions are referred to as pointing out practices. And what are the old metaphor of the finger that's pointing to the moon? The moon in all its glory is really the point. The finger is just to help you go, huh? What? Oh. But all we can see is this. We can't see the moon. So this question is meant to be a pointing out question. A koan is meant to be a pointing out koan. Everybody who attended this call today, or those who are watching it live on Facebook, if it's stimulating thought, great. Let that thought, let it cook, let it go through your life. If you're able to train in Aikido, take that into your next Aikido class. If you're not able to train in Aikido, take that into your next little friction you have with somebody. Or friction you have with COVID. My God, we're on a massive, humanity is facing a massive conflict right now. Take this koan in, and remember, the dualistic mind wants to answer. It drives us nuts. We got to find the answer. But remember what the German poet Rilke said in his book Letters to a Young Poet. Do not try to answer the question. It's a perfect instruction for koans. Do not try to answer the question, but rather do not try to find the answers, but rather live the question fully. And then at some day, perhaps far into the future, you will live into the answer. And what I'd like you all to do now is just to think of a conflict that you have right now, or that you've had recently. It could be the person that you're living with. It could be somebody that you know. It could be that difficult person at work. It could be, the traffic you have to face every day. It could be, oh my God, COVID-19. It could be political. Like in the States, there's a political polarity like we haven't seen for over 100 years. It's crazy. Since the Civil War, probably the polarity is just insane. Whatever it is, but think of a conflict and implicate yourself. So think of something. This is for you to decide. This is something for you. Think of something for you that is a conflict that you have, and the conflict's happening now. And what's your go-to? Are you going to aggressively control the conflict, like win, or are you going to avoid the conflict? I just, let me go over here. I don't want to deal with the conflict. Or are you going to, surrender? Passively surrender the conflict to the conflict, whatever it is. Does everybody have a conflict? Can't be that hard. Something. It's helpful if you pick one. You can just do this kind of energetically, the way that you deal with conflict. That's fine. And I want to introduce for a moment the Aikido Koan, and then we're going to put you in groups to discuss it. So for me, Aikido is a koan, and the Aikido Koan is a practice. And here's the practice. I tell you, before we do the Aikido Koan practice, let's sit quietly. Let's sit and just stop thinking for a moment. Or if the mind can't stop thinking, observe the thinking mind. If there's a dialogue or a monologue or discussion happening in your mind, take a breath, kind of step back a little bit, detach, and observe that. Remember, your power to observe, or the power to observe, is in your hands. That is the one thing you always have the capacity to do, is to just kind of shift back and observe, not what's just happening out there, but also what's happening in here. Another way to say that is mindfulness. Another way to say that is zanshin, or mushin, or daishin, or fudoshin, these beautiful Zen states of mind. Notice the body, sensations in the body. Notice the breath. Not to manipulate or change. You know, it might not be the ideal breath, but just notice it. Don't try to change it. Notice the mind. And again, it may not be the ideal tranquility of mind. It doesn't matter right now. We're not trying to change things. We're simply detaching and observing. We're experiencing thoughts without the thinker. Breath without the breather. And now from this space, once again, evoke the conflict with that person or somebody close to you or somebody not so close to you. Somebody you know intimately or personally, somebody you just, it's kind of a colleague at work or somebody at the market or something, or the situations. And notice if your tendency is to kind of aggressively move towards that conflict. Or notice if your tendency is to somehow passive aggressively control that conflict. You know, in a bit of a manipulation to get your way. Or notice if your tendency is to just really avoid it. You know, no thank you. Nope, I don't want to have that conflict. Or maybe even you just lose. They win again. Again, from this detached observing place, now we're going to introduce the Aikido Koan. The Aikido Koan is this, it's 4 questions. First question, our first statement. There's 4 sentences. And as I say it out loud, I invite you all to say it to yourselves. The first sentence, in the face of conflict, is, I'm not passive. The second sentence, in the face of conflict, is, I'm not aggressive. The third sentence, in the face of conflict, is, I am not passive aggressive. There's 4 sentences. I'll repeat the first 3 again. I'm not passive. I'm not aggressive. And I am not passive aggressive. And the 4th sentence, and this is really the key here, this is what activates creative development. The 4th sentence is a question, who am I? And each one of these 4 statements are in the face of conflict. I am not passive facing conflict. I'm not aggressive facing conflict. And I am not passive aggressive facing conflict. Who am I in the face of conflict? And just sitting in this open space within yourself and seeing what arises. Does the mind automatically jump in, or is there some creative imagining coming up? Again, these 4 sentences, I'm going to change the last part. I'm not passive. I am not aggressive. And I am not passive aggressive. Who am I in Aikido? I'm not passive in Aikido. I'm not aggressive in Aikido. And I'm not passive aggressive in Aikido. I'm not playing those little games, you know? I'm not passive aggressive in Aikido. Who am I in Aikido? Okay. Coming out of the meditation. We're going to go for 5 minutes into a breakout. Yeah, Kaylee, you want to open your mic?
Such
Yeah.
beautiful questions. I found that it was easiest to answer the very last question. Who am I in Aikido?
Yes, me
Right?
too.
Yeah. And what keeps coming up for me is that because I've been practicing since I was very small, I often am aware that the movement of Aikido, and I think this is probably true for everyone, that the movement itself has in a certain way trained my mind, my being, to be almost in a middle state, a non-dualistic middle state, a watchful state, a state of interest. And there's a word I want that's escaping me, and I hope it comes while we're talking. But exploring, growing. I definitely don't feel passive. I don't feel aggressive. I don't feel passive aggressive. I feel empathic. I feel like an explorer, growing, watching, perceiving, almost in a waiting or sitting with, allowing. Yeah.
That's what it is for me. For me, when my ego's not activated, let's say, you know, and what I mean by ego activated, I'm either aggressive or passive aggressive or playing some game or whatever. When I'm not there and I'm somehow in an Aikido coherent state, it happens through me. It just happens through me. Where the energy wants to go is actually Aikido, and I'm not like pulling, and I'm not doing I'm not directing at all. Rather, it's directing me.
Yeah.
You know the saying that we're not people. It's not Miles having a God experience, but God having a Miles experience. So it's not Miles having an Aikido experience, but Aikido is having a Miles experience. So there is something that's personal and unique to me and my history and my skill and whatever, but it's not me doing it in any way at all. In any sense of this, that's the feeling. Coming through, totally. Mr. Gilbert.
It was interesting. I felt myself sort of tearing up towards the end of that little meditation.
Really?
I thought about, I couldn't really identify with the word aggressive, but I knew what you meant. And so as I was thinking about how I am on the mat, or when I go to, let's say, do Shionage and there's resistance or the person clamps down or whatever, and how I'll use muscle to make it happen. And I realized in that moment, I'm not doing what you both just expressed really nicely. I'm okay. I'm really smooth and cool until somebody resists. Well, sorry, I got to, you know. And I realized everything I wanted, everything I talk about and all this flowing philosophical crap, it all comes down to that moment, you know? So when there's resistance, do I force it, or do I follow or allow or wait?
It's the moment of truth. It's the moment of truth. Yeah.
And I haven't trained now, and I guess I don't know about you guys, I haven't been on the mat, you know, in what, 9 months, 10 months, whatever it is. And I really first of all, I super miss it, but I really, when I have these little moments, it's like, I really don't want to be like that. I even thought about some of the people I would train with. It's like, there's no reason to do that. And I had a friend say something really interesting to me, someone who's actually awake. He woke up about 4 years ago, and he's also an Aikidoist. And he said he did this exercise years ago before awakening, where he just decided, I'm only going to put in this much pressure into my technique. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to let myself push more than that. And I thought, totally. So anyway, I think it's a beautiful exploration and number of considerations you're bringing before us, Miles. It's really nice. Yeah.
Well, you know, Caleb, Mark, I met Mark first here in Israel. He used to live here. So, you know, you're talking about Aikido on the map, but put yourself and forget
He used to
Portland.
trash me, throw me around, and
No.
he was like the
That's not my
Hulk.
point.
I'm kidding,
You live
he
in
didn't.
Portland, Eugene, where everybody's progressive and nice and easygoing. Come
I
back
wish
to
everyone
Israel.
was. I wish everyone
Well,
was.
come back to Israel. Yeah, it's probably very passive aggressive. When you're in Israel, it's actually aggressive. I gotta face it every day, every single day. Beautiful.
I'm
Beautiful.
still I'm searching for this word. If we have a moment, it's this word where you're interested, exploring, but there's a specific word. I think it starts with a C, but it would describe. It's interested. It's exploring. It's sitting with. Anyway.
Considering,
Curious. Yes.
curious.
Curious.
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah.
And
There's a joyful curiosity to it, right?
yeah.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. We're going to finish off. I've got a couple of announcements that I'm making. I'll take final words if anybody has any final words to make. And everybody's going to be back here in about 15 seconds. Ronnie, it's nice to see you. How are you doing?
Well, I'm quite okay. You know, I miss training here. But
Yeah.
we manage. It's nice to see you again.
Well, it's good to see you. I was just, you know, we had class tonight. So in Israel, we're actually training for about 4 weeks.
All right.
Minimum, you know, small groups were allowed to train. And I was just at the end of class tonight. I was telling everybody, you know, as soon as this thing's over, we're gonna have a big fucking party, and that's it. So it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Excuse my language, but okay. So listen, everybody. So we've come to the end. I've got a quick announcement to make. Then I'd like to open the mic if anybody has any final words. I suppose we'll finish around 15:15. Yeah, like I mentioned before, I've got an 8-week course called Meditation for Aikido coming up, and as a kind of a warm up for the launch of that course, I do things like this. I have a free online meditation course that's happening right now, and the Meditation for Aikido course, you know, Kayla's been in it, Ulrich has been. Anyway, several people on this call have already participated with this. Ronnie was in it, Manny's in it, Bob and Daniel. A lot of people have joined me in this, and it's a wonderful 8-week course. In fact, I would say it is the best meditation for Aikido course in the world. I wouldn't say it's the best meditation course in the world. I would say it's a damn good one, but it's not the best one in the world. But we meet like this, and we go over 8 weeks. And it's like the first week is Shoshin, beginner's mind. The second week is a deep dive into purification, misogi, and then oh god, I don't remember. Zanshin, Mushin, Fudoshin, Daishin, Takimuso Aiki. Each week is another theme that we bring into the mental training in a way, or the spiritual training of our Aikido practice, and we gather with a great sangha, and it's basically 8 weeks of meditating together and going through a very structured course. Each week we meet like this online, but the videos are recorded and placed in our members portal. I also send you practice videos each week. There's guided meditation and extra teachings. We have always 3 or 4 guest teachers. One of them is Teja Bell and Dominique Cassidy and Jenny Whitelaw Sensei. They're all meditation teachers, so they're going to come in and help teach with this. And I would love it if you're interested in joining. The course itself is $297, but on top of the course, I also have there's over $400 of bonuses, for free bonuses. You know, one is my recent online Boken course, and there's a bunch of great stuff there. If you're interested in looking at it, you can find it at theintegraldojo.com and just go to the training, theintegraldojo.com, then go to the training. In fact, if you're on this, you're going to be getting an email about it, so check it out. But if you're just watching the replay, theintegraldojo.com, go into training and you'll find out about the course. We'd love to have you join it. People have already started registering, so we start this coming Saturday. It starts, so in about 5 or 6 days. And if you're just interested in starting meditation, I actually have another course that is a free course right now. It's a 3-part free training, and in fact, I would say that this is the second best meditation for Aikido course, and this one's free. And you can find that one also on my website. It's called on theintegraldojo.com. Go there and you'll see up in the upper right corner, there's a place you can click Meditation for Aikido, and you can go do the 3-part free training. And it's a great way if you're a beginner in meditation. You get everything there you'll need just to get started in the practice. And yeah, the Chinese have a saying, a teacher for a day is a teacher for a lifetime. A teaching for a day is a teaching for a lifetime. Some of you I see every few weeks, if not more. Some of you I see every few years, and some of you I'm seeing for the first time. Regardless of the case, it's not so much about me, but whatever we worked on today, this kind of teaching, this Aikido Koan teaching that we touched on today, it really is a life lesson. And it's my wish that you carry that through your life. And somebody wrote the other day about dojos, because dojos are having a hard time right now with COVID, and about, I guess paying dues for your local dojo. And, I say the same thing about a dojo as I did they say for monasteries and for the Dharma. Support the Dharma, and the Dharma will support you. Support your dojo, and your dojo will support you forever and always. Does anybody have any final words that you want to say, or any quick, we're not going to do questions today because that'll maybe take a little bit too much time, but if you do raise your hand, I'll open your mic.
I was just thinking about what Kyla said. I don't know if the rest of Kyla Sensei, sorry.
Kayla.
Kayla, oh, my bad. About curiosity and approaching this with that kind of openness. And the word that came up for me when you said, is there a word, or is there what you were like searching for the word? I remember training with Ano Sensei in Santa Cruz several years ago, and he really came forward and said, he was trying to get us into this space. It was really interesting. We did the same thing over and over again for several times. And he said, and he would say, like, you guys are doing great. You're really doing fantastic. Your technique's better than mine. It's wonderful. But I want you, but between when you throw your partner and when they attack again, what are you thinking about? And he says, I want you to think about gratitude. Were you there, Kayla?
Nice.
It was fantastic. And I thought at that moment, it was a moment of spiritual brilliance. Like, what could you insert as a seed that would remind people of what you're trying to get to? So in addition to curiosity, I just want to throw out the reminder, since it's right after Thanksgiving for some people, anyway,
Yes.
Thanksgiving's Day.
Well played.
Yeah, well, I'm not in Israel. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I think with that one, why don't we sit for 1 minute in gratitude?
Right.
Yeah, for art, for Aikido, for this fucking koan. Again, forgive my language, but for this koan that drives us mad, but also supports us and nourishes us. Let's sit for 1 minute.
Quickly, I want to thank you. Everything you're doing for us in the Aikido world and the meditation world. Thank you for putting yourself out there in such a beautiful, clear way.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Kayla. That's really nice to hear from you. Great. Let's sit with that for about a minute, and then we'll finish off. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining this community call on Aikido, martial art, or spiritual path. And I want to wish you all, may the Aikido Koan hold you. May the Aikido Koan squeeze you. May the Aikido Koan drive you mad. And may the Aikido Koan lead you to utter sanity, clarity, sanity. And whatever the case, may the Aikido Koan lead you forward, forever and always forward on your path of practice. Thank you very much, everybody. Much love. Until next time.